Let us see what is destined for Prashant. Eventually, finally, Prashant reached his village Kalikuda. So here is the name of his village. His heart went cold, his heart sank. He felt quite dejected, hopeless. Why? Because he could just find the remains of the roof of his house. Where their home once stood, there were only remnants, remains of its roof. It refers to their house. Some of their belongings were caught, mangled. Mangled means got torn, got disfigured and twisted, turned in the branches of trees, just visible above the dark waters. We very well understand the meaning of dark waters here, as there was a cyclone. Young Prashant decided to go to the Red Cross shelter to look for his family. So this was his decision. He has presence of mind. Among the first people he saw in the crowd, of course there was a crowd, there were many people who had taken shelter in the Red Cross relief camps. And the first one he saw was his maternal grandmother, weak with hunger because there was a cyclone. She rushed to him, she came running to him, her hands outstretched, stretched towards Prashant, her eyes brimming with tears. It was a miracle. Why? Because they had long given him up for dead. The way, it was just same. Prashant thought his family must not have survived, and in the same manner his family took him for dead. Quickly word spread, which word? That Prashant was alive, and his extended family, all the relatives, gathered around him and hugged him tight in relief. Prashant anxiously, worriedly scanned the motley, minutely observed the heterogeneous group. Why heterogeneous? Why motley? Because there were children, there were old people, there were men, women, battered group, destroyed group, his brother and sister, his uncles and aunts. They all seemed to be there, and that was in itself a big relief for him that his family was alive. By the next morning, as he took in the desperate, the hopeless situation in the shelter, when he observed them, he decided to get a grip over himself, control himself. He sensed a deathly grief settling upon the 2,500 strong crowd in the shelter. He could sense, he could understand their suffering. He could realize 86 lives were lost in the village. So here we are told the facts. All the 96 houses had been washed away. It is about Kalikuda. It was their 4th day at the shelter. So far they had survived on green coconuts, but there were too few to go around such a tumult of people, such a large, noisy crowd of people. Prashant, all of 19 years, decided to set in as leader of his village. Now students, this is very important because Prashant's role is going to be unfolded now. If no one else did, he thought that he would be the leader, he would make the things normal again. He organized what he did, a group of youths and elders to jointly pressurize the merchant once again to part with his rice. Merchant was not ready to sell his rice, but Prashant had tried for that. Let us see what the result was. This time the delegation succeeded and returned triumphantly, victoriously. The merchant got ready to sell his rice, wading, coming with difficulty through the receding waters, water moving back with food for the entire shelter. Now delegation word is used for the representatives who went to the merchant. No one cared that the rice was already rotting, it was already decaying. Branches from fallen trees were gathered to light a reluctant and slow fire. Why reluctant? Unwilling, on which to cook the rice. For the first time in 4 days, the survivors at the cyclone shelter were able to fill their bellies, fill their tummies. For the first time in 4 days, they got proper food. His next task was to organize a team of youth volunteers to clean the shelter. Cleanliness is must. That comes first. Shelter of filth, dirt, urine, vomit and floating carcasses, dead bodies, and to tend and to look after attend to the wounds and fractures of the many who had been injured, and all this work was done by Prashant. It was Prashant who had been organizing youth task force, who had been guiding, instructing the youth what to do at that tough time. So credit goes to his leadership qualities, and that frames a very important question of this chapter. Now let us see whether Prashant's efforts bring result or not. Thank you for your visit.